Um, Noam, I came from Azerbaijan, and about their research on the Shiite, Muslim, and Christian relationship. And I was very surprised to see over there are mosques, people, Sunni and Shiite, they are praying together, which we see they were in peace for centuries, really, and but praying together. In fact, there are some places there, they have, if you look at this picture, they have basically altars, 3 altars in the same mosque, and churches. There's a kind of tolerance, culture of tolerance. The question would be about 2 issues. One is the Sunni-Shiite conflict in the past. It was very bloody, but for centuries in many countries they had been in peace, living together. And also the United States' interest in the area wants stability, but it seems that there is more right now. It seems to me that there's provocation, trying to kind of a little bit rub off this conflict to maybe, I don't know, for certain agenda. Whether there is a contradiction between the policies, strategy in the Middle East.
When you say the U.S. Seeks stability, you have to understand the technical meaning of the word stability. Stability means following U.S. orders. So, for example, just to take an illustration, one leading foreign affairs specialist, James Chase, former editor of the Journal of Foreign Affairs, a liberal analyst, once wrote regretfully that it was necessary to destabilize Chile by overthrowing the parliamentary regime and installing a vicious dictatorship in order to bring about stability. So you have to destabilize the country in the aim of stability. It's not a contradiction if you understand the technical meaning. In order to ensure that the society follows U.S. orders, it was necessary to overthrow the government and elected government installed dictatorship. When the U.S. invades Iraq, the goal is to establish stability by destroying the society and, in fact, inflaming the Shiite-Sunni conflict, which was not there before. It was very much like what you described, intermarriage, living together, and so on. Now it's a bitter, brutal conflict. Just this morning, the press announced another 50 people killed yesterday, and it's spread throughout the region, inflamed by the invasion. But that's bringing about stability, an effort to bring about obedience to the United States. When Iran, in contrast, is accused of destabilizing its neighbors, Iraq and Afghanistan. How? By trying to extend its cultural and commercial influence. That's destabilizing because it draws them out of the U.S. orbit. So there's no contradiction when you understand the religion, the state religion that governs the way these things are discussed.
And what about the conflict in Syria? And
it began as an effort to extend what was happening in the so-called Arab Spring, efforts by democratic reformers to gain some, it's a pretty harsh and brutal dictatorship, to gain some limited democratic and human rights. The Assad regime reacted with extreme violence and brutality, and the dynamics finally led to an armed conflict, which has been moving towards a Shiite-Sunni conflict. That's part of what the U.S., the fires that the U.S. lit in Iraq are now burning throughout the region. In the background is a conflict between Iran and the oil dictatorships of the Gulf region, the extreme Islamic fundamentalists in Saudi Arabia and some of the Gulf states the dictators are in conflict with the Iranian regime for influence, and that's turned into a kind of a Sunni-Shia conflict as well. I mean, these, as you mentioned, these things go back centuries. There's always something simmering. And if you take a complex social situation and you hit it with a sledgehammer, a lot of awful things can happen. And in fact, that's what the invasion of Iraq did. And Syria is a case in point. It's become a Sunni Shia conflict, part of it. Also Kurdish. So Syria is in the process of moving towards a kind of suicide, but part of it will probably be partition. It's a tripartite partition with the Kurdish areas drifting towards Iraqi Kurdistan, maybe assimilating to them, and the rest divided between a government-run, most Alawite kind of Sunni Shiite region and a Sunni region supported by the Gulf dictatorship.
Do you see any kind of future, any prognosis regarding this issue?
Right now, the prognosis looks extremely grim. Iraq has been torn to shreds by the invasion. It's not recovering, getting worse in many ways. Syria is heading towards suicide. The conflict is indeed spreading over the region, and very dangerous. And it's kind of interesting to see the way American commentators discuss it. So, for example, David Brooks, the kind of New York Times conservative intellectual commentator, he had a column recently in which he pointed out accurately that we're all concerned about the bloodshed and massacres in Syria, but we should understand that in the background is a raging and growing Sunni Shia split throughout the region. And then he added something. He said, this is the result of, this is an indication of the failure of the U.S. policy of withdrawing from the region and removing our moderating influence. Well, that he's reflecting the state religion. The state religion is that what we do is benign. So if we destroy another country, that's helpful. Our moderating influence is what set off the conflict. Of course, not entirely, there are other factors, but that was what stimulated the horrors that are happening. But you can't see that if you're a dedicated believer in the state religion, which is a kind of fanaticism. There's a fanatic belief in the purity of American motives. That's what's called American exceptionalism. We have to believe in that, no matter what the facts are. And it's not unique to the United States. It was also true of Hitler Germany, of fascist Japan, of Roman's heyday. The sense that we're somehow magnificent is not affected by facts. It really is a fundamentalist religion, secular fundamentalist religion.
Thank you very much.
Yeah.
That's wonderful. I really appreciate it, Dr.